Welcome, everybody, to the Alliance Amateur Radio Network, where we talk about the amateur radio community. I am your host, Todd Owen, KE9DQS. For many people, especially those who may not have seen themselves represented in technical spaces, finding welcoming voices in the hobby can make all the difference. That's one reason we're especially excited to have our guest with us today. Many of you have seen the temporarily offline YouTube channel, and our guest's work as co-creator of the Toads Digital Interface Board. He has built a reputation for making amateur radio approachable, practical, and fun. We're very excited to have our guest today, KM9G, Steve McGrane. Welcome, Steve.
Howdy, Todd. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'll always like to start off with the person before the radio. People know the call sign, they know the YouTube channel, but outside amateur radio, who is Steve McGrane?
That's kind of an interesting question. So outside of amateur radio, I have a very interesting background. I have done all kinds of stuff. I kind of like to just experiment and play around, not just inside of ham radio, but also outside of ham radio. So I got my career started in, IT industry, IT field. So highly technical background for that. I did that for quite a number of years. And then, after a while, you get a little bit burnt out with corporate America and how fun that is to be a part of. And I started a small farm where I raised livestock.
Very cool.
So I had cows and pigs and sheep and all kinds of stuff. And then I got into ham radio a little bit deeper than I had before. And I started out with the YouTube channel. And even before all of that, while I was doing the IT stuff in the early days, I was, racing cars and doing driver instruction and stuff like that. And I've got a firearm instructor's license from the NRA, license, certificate, credentials is probably the easiest word to use there. So I like to just, play with things and go down the rabbit hole and see where it takes me and enjoy it as I go along. And if it works, it sticks. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't stick. So, that's kind of the way things are. So I've got a pretty, varied background. A lot of my...
very eclectic, it sounds like. Very
when
cool.
I was younger,
it
was all, my dad was all into model railroading and stuff. So he shared that hobby with me. And then also, we built out the house. We started out with a 3-bedroom house and turned it into a 6-bedroom house with an addition and stuff like that. So, my parents always said, you can do anything if you put your mind to it, or you can do anything if you try. And I've actually had to teach myself the opposite. You probably shouldn't do anything. You can, don't get me wrong, but you probably shouldn't. Like, there's some things that you shouldn't do. So I've had to back it off a little bit, especially as you get older and get a little more fragile, I guess would be the way to say it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Very cool with the, like I said, very eclectic interest there, definitely. So what, these days, what does a normal day look like for you?
So now I do the YouTube channel full time. And so a normal day to me looks like, checking correspondence, checking YouTube comments, checking emails, making sure that all the videos are headed in the right direction, figuring out what I did right the last time, do more of that, figure out what I did wrong the last time, do less of that. I try to film a video a day, and I have a publishing schedule of about 3 videos a week and 7 shorts a week right now. So if you haven't seen a video of mine in a while, it's because the YouTube algorithm has decided not to show me to you. So you might have to go find me again. Yeah. And that's a constant struggle. They're doing their best to surface content that the viewer might like. And so I have to do my best to make sure that my content is likable by the audience that I want to achieve. And basically, don't use the word algorithm, use the word friend, who is my friend that I want to share this with? And then you will wind up with all of your friends being, connected to your channel. So.
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten a lot of, great information from your videos, and whether it's the reviews or like the how-tos and stuff like that. I mean, it's definitely been helpful along my ham journey for sure.
I try to do reviews in a way that makes more sense, like
Yeah.
I can just open the box and show you what's in it and say, "Yep, this is this thing," and I can read the web page to you, but you can read the web page yourself. I try to
Yeah.
do something a little more different. Sometimes I don't have any choice. You know, I call them yachts, yet another HT, like Baofeng's. I do a radio on a review on a Baofeng. It's a Baofeng. After about the 15th review, you run out of things to say. So here it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
This is the new 25th anniversary edition. It looks like every radio they've made for the last 25 years, except it's in a special
different
color.
colors.
That's literally all I have to say about that. Like, it is exactly the same radio. FCC
Yeah.
requirements say you can't change it or else you got to go through a whole new application process. So they changed the color of the case. Okay, here you go.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's like how to do, like WinLink on a handheld featuring this new radio that comes with all of this stuff that, you can find for this price and it goes on sale on Tuesday. So I kind of wrap like news into how to make it a little more connected.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, for myself, a visual learner more than like a read learner, it definitely helps out a lot.
Yeah.
With all of the various ham projects that we can get going for sure. And it sounds like you do have multiple projects all going all the time.
All the
Does that
time.
hold true for you?
All the time. Yeah, it's whatever I can actually work on today. So, you kind of find out that you might be able to have, so many 15-minute windows to get projects done or so many 2-hour blocks to get projects done, but you can't always get the project done because there's something in the way, something that doesn't work out or some piece of information that you didn't think about or that you do need that you don't have or whatever. Like I'm missing a cable in order to get the job done. Okay, well, now I got to wait 2 days for Amazon to come in with a cable, So that whole project gets put in a box and put off on the side, which is why I have all these boxes back here. And then we have this thing in our hobby called gear acquisition syndrome. We've all got a little gas. And so some of the stuff back here I bought and I haven't even done more than turn it. I haven't even turned on some of the stuff back here. And one of the radios I bought used at a ham fest and found out it was broken. And now that becomes a different project than the one I had in mind. Now I've got to repair it.
Oh yeah.
So I'll dive in and repair it and see what I can come up with. And if I can't repair it, it was already broken to begin with. So that's a big thing that I learned very early on. It's already broken. You can't make it worse. Yeah, I mean, you might make it more expensive to fix, but
for sure.
You can always decide not to fix it.
Yeah. And speaking of fixing and tinkering, I mean, you've briefly touched on it earlier, but have you always been a tinker or a maker, as the popular term these days?
Yeah, I used to get boxes of PC parts and build PCs, and it didn't matter if they were old or new or whatnot. And as somebody came in, I used to work at a local computer store in town, and somebody came in with a box of just miscellaneous whatever. There was an old MFM hard drive, there was a hard drive controller, there was a motherboard, there was this piece of bent metal that I figured out is how you connect all the drives, physically mount them. So I got out a piece of plywood from the shop and cut it down to size and screwed the bracket on and put the hard disks in, put the motherboard on the piece of plywood and found the missing pieces and got it all working. Hey, this is pretty cool. Great. Now, what do I do with this thing? It works, but it's a behemoth, and I can't sit stuff on top of it. So you just play around.
Definitely. I mean, that's part of it.
Yep.
That's a big part of it, really. And I think a lot of people assume that aren't familiar with all the technical hobbies that we spend every waking hour surrounded by oscilloscopes and coax cable.
Most of
when
them,
you're not
every.
when you're not around the radios creating content, what kinds of things do you enjoy doing?
So right now I have a little motorcycle. It's a Honda Trail 125, and I purposely got a lightweight small motorcycle because I am a full-time RVer on top of all of this stuff. And I can put that in the back of the pickup truck, and then I can take my RV and my motorcycle and my truck to the next campground, and then I can unload the bike and go ride around the trails in the dirt and stuff. So I'll do that, and a lot of times I can get pretty close to the summit for a soda activation. So I can take care of that instead of, hiking 5 miles up a mountain. I can ride 5 miles up a mountain and then hike, the 25 feet away to get everything set up properly.
Very
so
cool.
I do that. I really actually do enjoy taking ham radio and then applying it into YouTube space for educational purposes. I kind of got this teacher bug in me. And so I like to, help people move along and gain some knowledge and learn some new tricks. And I always tell people there's more than one way to do it. So yes, You can do it your way or you can do it my way. At the end of the day, I'm not right or wrong. You're not right or wrong, but we both achieved the same goal. And I can't show you a tutorial in YouTube speed with the short attention spans that people have now
Yeah.
and cover all 12 ways to do something. I can do 12 different videos and somebody might watch
There
all
you
12
go.
of them actually, but I couldn't do one video that was 4 hours long that had all 12 ways to do it. So, I always reply back, there's more than one way to do it, and that's fine.
Yeah, it definitely the teaching bug is definitely evident in like your videos, and it is roundly appreciated. There are any other hobbies that might surprise people to learn about with you?
I mean, we covered kind of a broad
Yeah,
amount of the stuff in the beginning. I mean, it
yeah,
would be pretty shocking to see somebody into amateur radio who also raises livestock.
yeah.
So,
I don't particularly raise them. My wife, my wife has horses, and I definitely help out with them. But it's more of her hobby than mine. But
yeah.
yeah, that's very cool with the farm stuff, and that's kind of a it seems like a popular thing for a lot of people to be doing here these days with the farm animals and stuff like that, even in the
Yeah.
urban areas too. But yeah, very
Returning
cool.
back to our roots is very important. I mean, we live in a instant gratification society, and that's
Yeah,
really not what we were designed to do. And it causes a lot of problems with our caveman firmware that we're running on.
yeah,
So, just trying to connect back to where things come from, and gives you kind of a broader appreciation.
very cool. And what kind of music or background noise helps keep you company when you're working on your projects?
So because of the video filming, I really can't do background noise.
Yeah,
YouTube
I
has
guess.
this huge copyright system, and if I
Yeah,
play more than so many seconds of any kind of audio behind the scenes, then they'll flag it. And now they've gotten smart enough where it's like they can tell me that they found copyrighted audio inside of the video, and then they can attempt to remove it. So you might, if I did have it in the beginning, I can kind of remove the background music, but you can still hear my spoken word kind of thing. And so that's why I don't do a lot of music. Also, I'm not really all that good at it. That's why I don't do a lot of music in the video. I mean, I realize you can kind of set the mood and set the tempo
yeah,
and stuff, but I don't do, cinematography, movie style, videos. I do like bench shots that show you how to desolder something or solder
yeah.
something
No,
together.
it's
And so
yeah,
I'll do maybe a little bit of background music, but I mean, I kind of like more of the eclectic stuff. I like some, freeform jazz. I like some old blues, some stuff like that. Not really a big fan of the current modern music that's out there, but
yeah.
not because I'm a cranky old fart and think it's the devil's music. Just I just don't like the message that's in it. So
No,
I'm
I agree. I definitely my fallback's always like the older stuff. I mean, it's what I grew up on. But
yeah.
I would like it would drive me insane when I was a young kid because I always wanted to listen, the top 40 stuff. And my parents would listen to the old stuff, and then I'm like,
Yep.
but now I appreciate that so much, like in my older years. So, but the kids can have the top 40 stuff. I'll stick with the classics
Yep.
for sure.
Well, it's funny. The classics have changed. When I was a kid, my parents listened to oldies, and
Yeah,
now that I'm an adult and have kids, my kids listen to classic rock.
yeah,
And
oh yeah,
that's just what we listen to. It's funny to go out to a fancy restaurant and hear them playing like the Beastie Boys as the table
yeah,
music
yeah,
for
oh
dinner.
yeah.
It's like,
It's
what?
hilarious. Yeah.
This does not work.
Well, yeah, yeah. I'll hear like a Green Day song on a classic rock station, and
Yeah.
I'm just like,
No,
oh.
it's not classic. No. So,
Well, it's funny how many hams I've met who can troubleshoot a radio in 5 minutes, but somehow have like we talked about three unfinished projects sitting on bench for 6 months,
yep.
and
Yep.
and usually once somebody has that curiosity bug, it spreads into everything else they do. Every
Yeah.
ham shack has a vibe. Some look clean, like clean engineering labs. Others look like a tornado hit Radio Shack in 1994.
Kind of
Which
50-50. Yeah.
yeah, which category do you fall into there?
I try to stay organized. A lot of it has to do with the fact that, I can't have terribly disorganized space, but I do manage it with camera angles so that you can't see all of the clutter. I mean, you can still see some clutter here, but some of it is like part of what's going on. Like I don't know if they're on video or not, but if you can see this, there's a, red and black wire coming down the wall. That's because I have solar panels on the roof and I'm actually actively demonstrating how to make solar systems. So that's not necessarily the right way to do it, but also I want the wires to be shown
Yeah,
so that people go, "Oh, why has he got red and white power wires, 8 gauge power wires running up his wall. There's got to be something going on there. And then maybe they'll go a little bit deeper in the channel and do that. I've got a towel rack behind me with, various HTs, yachts, yet another HT, the yacht club hanging out up there.
Yep. I love
I've
that
got
term.
a desoldering station. I've got an oscilloscope that I actually, you really don't need an oscilloscope much in the hobby today. There's a lot of easier ways to do it with the way parts are available
Yeah.
and so on. Lots of Raspberry Pi stuff, lots of little mini computer stuff that I'm playing with because of the IT background. And I have to sort of like break everything down, clean it up, put it away, and then get out the new video project and get it all set up and get working on that. And then as the project gets more and more involved, the workbench gets messier and messier as I'm working. And then I got to maybe take a minute and clean up halfway through a project or something like that. So, like I can't have like an ICOM 705 video in progress and then also be working on a, how to FT8 with a Zygo G90 video because
Yeah.
now you've got a 705 in the scene that doesn't belong there. And sometimes you can get away with it, sometimes you can't. Sometimes I need a supporting actor, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like if I'm trying to verify a radio can transmit, I need a radio that can receive and vice versa. So really just depends on the project. But part of the problem with that, somebody was asking me the other day, like, what's your normal radio station setup look like? What do you do on the air every day? And I'm like, I make videos.
Yeah.
I don't really get on the air much. I have to constantly tear down a station and set up a station. And then on top of that, I'm constantly moving from one location to another. So I don't really have like, in the RV park, there's not a lot of space to set up antennas. I could, but your typical RV camper gets there on Friday afternoon, late Friday evening, gets their camp set up, gets their chairs set up, gets their outdoor cooking station set up, puts up their, pergola, gazebo, portable tent thing, sets up their antennas, gets their 2-meter J pole up so they can do APRS and whatnot, and then sits down to a nice dinner and whatnot. And I get to the campsite and I'm like getting ready to make a video on Saturday. So I've got to do that. And if I do set up a station, I'm staying longer than the weekend. So when Monday rolls around, they're out cutting the grass. So there goes all my ground radials kind of thing. So, like I'll wind up setting the station up on Friday and then tearing it back down on Monday. And then life happens and it doesn't come back up. So I have to make a dedicated reason to go do, to go play radio. And so that for me is usually like some kind of POTA thing. And then POTA becomes an antenna experiment. Then the antenna experiment becomes a video. And, so I play radio differently than a lot of people play radio, but I always tell people this is a hobby of 1,000 hobbies. So,
100%. Yeah.
My hobby with ham radio is making videos.
Oh yeah. There's so many wormholes to go down for sure. And those wormholes create more wormholes, and it just builds on the backs of each one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and they're all valid.
Yeah,
they're all good ways
100%.
of doing it. I know one guy that likes to build radios, has his license, and never gets on the air and makes contacts. He just proves that his radio works, and then puts the project in a box and goes and makes another radio out of spare parts that he's found somewhere.
Yeah, I mean
Cool.
it's however you want to. It's however you want to use it. The hobby.
People have never gotten on HF in 40 years of being a ham. Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's whatever you want to do. Very cool. Well, let's dive into kind of like your ham radio origins here. It's always fascinating hearing how people first discover amateur radio because almost nobody enters the hobby the exact same way as we just were kind of going over. Some people come in through emergency communications, and some people through engineering and computing, like yourself, and some through family members. Others simply stumble across and fall down the rabbit hole. That's kind of like me. What first got you interested in amateur radio?
So, I'm a man of a certain age, a certain vintage, if you will. I'm not too old. I'm not too young. I'm probably, I guess the easiest thing to say is I'm one of the Gen Xers, and we didn't grow up with cell phones and always connected everything and whatnot. And so we would drive our cars for hours without any phone connectivity in the car or any internet connectivity or anything. Like we wouldn't even imagine such a thing being possible. People did have wireless phones. They weren't necessarily cell phones, but wireless phones that operated off of radio tech. And that was interesting. I used to listen to some of the long distance talk radio shows, especially on the long evening drives when you could get, the AM stations out of Mexico or something like that. and you would see the license plates that were very obviously of a certain format, like
Yep.
two letters, a number, three letters, one letter, a number, two letters, something like that. And those must be ham radio tags. And then I'd start to play the game of like, is that a ham radio tag? Because
Yep.
that looks kind of like it is. And then you get up closer to the car and it would say amateur radio operator.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so that sparked the curiosity, and it took me a long time to actually get into playing with radios because there's like we said before, there's so many different things to do, and modems came around and the internet came around, and that was more accessible than having to get a ham radio license and so on. So I didn't really get into ham radio until I bought the farm. The positive way of buying the farm, not the I died way of buying a farm.
I figured that.
And then I had plenty of land and I had some disposable income and I could go out and get some radios and throw up some antennas and figure out how it all worked. And one of the things I ran straight smack into was the local grumpy old men at the local ham club. And your antenna's a compromised antenna. And as a young, new, impressionable ham, I don't know what that means. I think you're, making fun of me and calling me names and stuff. And now that I've been in it for a while, every single antenna is a compromised antenna of some kind or another. No matter how much money you spend, your antenna can't do something. No matter how little money I spend, my antenna can't do what yours does. But, there's room in the hobby for all of them, in my mind. But I didn't know that. He's like, well, that's a compromised antenna. Okay, well, there goes my hobby. I'm out, and I wasn't. But not a positive experience. So I wanted to make sure that there was some counter voice to that out there. And there was a lot, but there was plenty of room for more. And so, I've created a couple of ham clubs. One of them is active in Wisconsin, where I started my ham journey. I officially got my license and started my ham journey, which explains the 9 call.
Yep.
And those guys still meet every Wednesday for hours, not just, a business meeting where they argue about club politics and then they stop that and they argue about real politics and then they stop that and are angry with each other and go home. These guys, we build radios together. We do field day. We do lots of activities. And that club is growing pretty good still, even though I've left Wisconsin now, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. The club is still there. And then I have another club that's kind of an online only club, and that is the Toads Club, Kilo Tango Zero Alpha Delta Sierra. And Toads is an acronym, but I won't tell you what it means. Okay. And you can join the club by joining the Toads Discord, and I can get you a link for the description of the video for the show notes. And once you've joined the Discord server, you're part of the club, and you can activate using the club call sign. And that club has activated all states in POTA. So we've got all states activated, and we've done worked all states as well, which is a little bit easier, especially when there's 5,000 members in the club. So it's just trying to be that ambassador that makes the hobby fun and that counterbalance to the person who's done it all and doesn't see any reason to do it ever again, kind of thing.
Very cool. And it's definitely appreciated. And I think some of the older hams, like the gatekeeping it gets old.
I don't understand it. Yeah. I mean, it's like, this is a hobby about experimentation, but there are people who very specifically do not believe that anybody should ever experiment ever.
Yeah. It's definitely the hypocrisy is palpable for sure.
So when you've got some downtime, look this one up. There was actually an anti-single sideband society.
Oh, I think I've read about that shortly. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. In a hobby all about experimentation, how could you be against trying a new way of playing radio?
I know
why, but
the vitriol for like FT8 is crazy. Like, and that seems to be at the top right now. Like it's the hate or loving of FT8 right now it's funny almost. It's just kind of like, but anyway, I'm not super active on Discord. I have joined your guys' Discord.
Cool.
Right now, I'm collecting all the Discord servers I can, like of all the ham radio stuff.
There's a lot.
Like I've just been a collector of Discords right now. But I'd like to get more active on that. But I'll definitely check that out for sure, like more in depth than I have recently. But and then so. Again, back to the origins of, do you remember your first radio?
My first radio was a Kenwood TM-281 Alpha. So 50 watts, 2 meter only radio,
Yeah.
which I thought was interesting and kind of an interesting choice there. And at the same time, I also got, of course, the Baofeng UV5R. Mine was yellow,
Oh
and
yeah.
I've since given that away to a new ham. And
Oh
I've had so many radios since then.
oh, I can. Yeah. The like you said, you're plenty of yachts. That's how you coined that phrase. Do you remember your first contact or your first major like wow moment with the hobby?
I actually tried to contact another member of my club, and I didn't understand. Like you said, you're more of a hands-on learner. I read it obviously in the study guides and the manuals and so on about HF propagation, but I didn't really understand local versus distance versus skip zones versus that kind of thing. And I was trying to contact a local ham down the street from where I was, but I was trying to do it on like 20 meters. It took me a long time in the very beginning, like you don't know what you don't know kind of thing. And as a as an older ham, you'll probably laugh when I say this, but as a brand new to the hobby ham, and I try to, have some grace and remember that people were at this stage in their hobby journey, just like I was way back
Yeah.
when. I didn't know what you meant when you said inverted V. And when
Yeah.
you first install an antenna in an inverted V shape, it's like, well, duh, that's what that means. It looks like an
Yeah.
upside down
Yeah.
V. So it's an inverted, like way too literal, which
Oh
is
yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of odd.
Exactly. It's like
Yeah.
oh, it actually is an inverted V.
It's an inverted V. And then, depending on how high you get it off the ground or how low
Yep.
it is to the ground and what time of day it is and all that kind of jazz is when you can make those kinds of contacts. And whether it's vertical or horizontal or sloper or whatever, like even sloper, what does sloper mean? And then when you put one
Yeah.
up, like,
Yeah.
oh,
I was just
it
thinking of that. Yeah.
slopes. That's what that means.
Yeah.
But
All the. It's like. I mean, it has its. I mean, ham radio has its own slang for sure.
yeah, it does. And there's no way so that people always complain about memorizing the test questions because that's the thing you can do now. There's no way that you can get into this hobby from a pure physics angle at the level that the hobby is at today. I mean, if it
Yeah.
was just pure physics, you would never make a contact
Yeah.
because you'd spend the rest of your life studying how the takeoff angle on the antenna works.
Oh
Well, at
yeah.
some point you have to just take it on faith that putting an antenna in the air, connecting it to a radio, and verifying the connections is going to be able to enable you to make some kind of contact to somewhere. And, a lot of things like having to identify your call sign every 10 minutes. There's no way outside of memorization. That's not a law of physics. That's a law of government. And
Yeah.
laws of government are their own kind of, side rabbit hole kind of thing. But I understand why you have to identify, but you can't discover identifying your call sign every 10
Oh
minutes.
yeah. Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
just it's memorization done. So don't be afraid to memorize stuff and get on the air and experiment. Like people say it's a license to learn, it's a license to experiment kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of wrong ways to do things compared to how
No. I
many
mean.
times you're told it's the wrong way. I mean, yeah, you can
Yeah.
destroy your radio, but that's also a learning experience.
Yeah. The only wrong is it like whatever the FCC defines as wrong, and that's pretty much
Right.
it.
Right.
Yeah, if it doesn't fall under Part 97, go for it. Yeah,
Right.
or if it doesn't go against Part 97, then go for it.
And Part 97 is pretty broad. We can make our
Yeah,
own radios from scratch parts and so on, and then we can operate them in this manner on these frequencies. And
yep,
I get that. Like, how come you can't do commercial transactions? Well, you can do commercial transactions on radios. You just don't use Part 97. You
yep,
use Part 90, Part 95, whatever.
yep,
Like your cell phone is a radio, and you order pizza with your cell phone and you pay for it with your credit card over the airwaves.
yep.
They're just not Part 97 airwaves. Perfectly fine.
Definitely. Do you have like a mentor in coming up in ham radio?
I have a lot of mentors.
Yeah,
There's
that's
I always say,
usually the
the
case.
shoulders of giants. So my first mentor was Gail WD9HFT, and he was a big help. Greg N9CHA was also a big help, local Wisconsin guys. Rick W9WS. And then from there, kind of branched out, and YouTube became the Elmer as I moved away or wanted to go deeper down the rabbit hole on certain aspects. And there was a lot of people on YouTube that helped me get to where I am and are still helping me get farther because I don't know everything and I never pretend to know everything. And what I say is I'm Got to get this out first because it's a mental philosophy. I'm not I'm usually right, but I'm usually right because I don't say things when I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Or if I do, I tell you I'm not 100% sure, but this is
Yeah.
what I think. And I'm right that I think that,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be arrogant or, egocentric
No,
or
I
something,
mean,
but from a teaching perspective, I try to like prove this is the thing that I'm showing you. This is it working. This is how it worked. This is how you can do this. So at the end of the day, it's right. There's a lot of learning to get me up to that for sure, but I don't profess to know until I do know kind of thing. So, so I now hopefully am Elmering a lot of people through that kind of
oh,
mentality,
100%. I mean, you among others are one of my, I guess passive Elmer would be the way to do it. Yeah, just all the stuff that
Yeah.
you see on YouTube, 100%. Yeah.
Yep.
And I love hearing all these stories because almost every operator remembers like the early moments vividly. It's amazing how one small experience, hearing a distant signal, talking to that repeater, and making the first HF contact can completely
Sweating
redirect
to
someone's
death
interest.
making a CW contact, literally sweating at the key.
Yeah, oh
Like
yeah,
this is so stressful. It's fun, but it's so stressful. And then they're like, you put the key down, you're like, oh, it's over
like I
with.
did it.
You know, when I was first learning Morse code, and I still don't know it very well, but when I was first learning, it was like, all right, we've got this. And then the guy wanted to talk about the weather. I'm like, I don't want to talk about the weather. The contact's over. We're done. And I don't even know how to end the contact. It's like I'll just hang up. I got nothing.
Yeah, 7-3.
Yeah. But, like you didn't even know 7-3, and it's like they should have taught you that, or the question mark. They should have taught you that. And like that should be the first thing you learn is the question,
Yeah,
like, what did you say? Send
yeah.
that again. That should be the first thing that you learn is how to send a question mark, but it's not.
I'll learn all those
First thing you
Q
learn
codes
is
and how to use them. Yeah,
the K. You learn the letters K and N in the Koch method or Koch method, depending on how
yeah,
you pronounce the guy's name. I don't know how to pronounce it, so I do it wrong, I'm sure, but scary stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
so
Oh
I
yeah,
did a video on how to do Morse code and how to like have the training wheels on, and went through the entire QSO. And oddly enough, you would think this is the wrong advice, but oddly enough, the best way to do it is to contact someone who's holding a frequency in a contest, because they are repeating their call sign over and over and over again, and you just sit there and listen for half an hour, 45 minutes until you figure out what his call sign is when he's done it 45 times in a row for the last 45 QSOs he's done in that half an hour or whatever. And the exchange is like your call sign 59 and a number, like that's all
yeah,
you got to do. And
yeah.
then he'll send back, like K or dit or something. And okay, like there's no chance of a rag chew in the middle of a contest. Well, there's a very, very, very slim chance. Like they don't want it. You don't want it. Perfect storm of what we want to have happen in our first CW contact. And you would
Yeah.
think all the pressure of a contest, I don't want to be anywhere near that. That's so fast paced and everybody's doing like, no, it's like I send 16 characters and I'm out. And I know
Yeah.
exactly what those 16 are, and I've practiced them for 2 days before the contest started. And you could probably win the rookie, what do they call that? The state QSO party CW category.
Yeah.
Be out of state for the state QSO party and send your call sign about 100 times.
Yeah.
Good.
Well,
Probably
there you
even
go.
20 times would get it.
Yeah, listening it over and over again, it's like kind of like immersion with like learning a
Yeah.
new foreign language. Yeah. So yeah, it's the same thing. Another language basically.
So I got that trick because when I was doing CW learning, I went to the Ham Club Shack and was cleaning up, like taking the trash out, organizing stuff, getting stuff set up on the shelves, the Club Shack just piles up with stuff until somebody takes some initiative to do something about it. So that was me. And I turned the HF radio on and I tuned it to a CW frequency, and I kept hearing da dit 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 da over and over again. And as I'm going through, I'm like, okay, well, I got the first one. That's a T. And I got the second one. And then test. And now I hear da, 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 da. And I'm like, test. I hear the word. I don't hear the four letters that make the word. And
Yeah,
that's,
that sounds like
as you get better in
that sounds like a
CW.
good way a good
Yeah. I mean,
method for sure.
I don't know much else, but, I know that one really well.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Well, we'll move into like the more the ham radio community and belonging, stuff like that. One thing we like to talk about here with Alliance Amateur Radio Network is how powerful hobbies can be when people feel genuinely welcomed into them. For many
yes.
people, especially newcomers or people from backgrounds that haven't historically been visible in amateur radio spaces. Sometimes the biggest hurdle isn't learning the technical material, it's simply feeling like they belong. What has amateur radio community meant to you personally?
So I have taken on the role of community builder. And so I definitely hear and identify with everything you just said. I try to make sure that when someone shows up, hey, how you doing? How did you get into the hobby? What's your favorite thing? Or, if it's a POTA activity, you want to sit down and grab the mic or run the log or got any questions? Like here's how we set the station up, or we're going to set up this antenna today. I need you to help me do this. And just immersion is how I learn best. And that's how I try to get people in and do stuff. You want to be net control today? Great. Let's do net control. Here's how you do it, kind of thing. And people make mistakes. This is mostly, I mean, there is an emergency aspect of it, don't get me wrong, but this is mostly a hobby. We do provide a service. We provide a very valuable service, but you don't
Yeah.
get to provide the service until you get through playing
Yep.
around. And your Monday night net in your local ham club is not at all an emergency high pressure situation.
No.
So totally welcome somebody and give them those training wheels and let them know there is no pressure here. People stutter, people stammer, people step on words and whatnot. Not a big deal. This is your playground.
That's me.
Yeah. And everything is safe. This is not mission control. We're not trying to land on the moon. There's not only one way to do this and only one way to do this, or 6 of us die. It's I didn't hear your call sign. Please repeat it, Okay. And if you happen to identify yourself every 11 minutes instead of every 10 minutes, no one's coming to break your door down with guns. It's fine. You will survive. But you'll also be better for the experience, and having someone kind of help you along that journey, I think is kind of encourage you to do new things. I really wish they would change the entry level license to ham radio. I envision, and this is going to be very controversial. Some people don't want to change this at all. I had to do it, so you have to do it. But I kind of envision come to the club, pass the law test. I have to identify my call sign. I can't transmit outside of certain frequencies. I have to I obey the A line at the border between Canada and the U.S. kind of thing. I have to all that stuff that you can't discover, that you have to memorize because it's legal stuff. Now that you've got that done and those are good, and we know that you know what the rules are. Here are the components of a station, and we're going to watch you put it together. And then when it's put together with, somebody here with some training wheels for you, we're going to have you make a contact to somebody in the other room who's waiting for you to make the contact. And there's no time limit. There's no nothing. It's not going to take you long anyway, but take your dual bander, hook it up to a power supply, hook it up to an antenna, turn it on, tune up the right frequency, check to make sure the frequency isn't in use, identify yourself, and call CQ. And then somebody in the other room is going to answer you. And now you've covered assembling a station, you've covered coax, you've covered antennas, you've covered power supplies. My first ham radio experience, I plugged a radio into a typical, AC to DC wall wart, and it didn't have enough amps to power it. Yes, you go through the study guides, you go through the manuals, and you know that it only produces so many amps and whatnot. But I'm excited, I've got so many years on the planet, and I've plugged DC wall warts into, DC barrel jacks into electronics and turned them on. I've never transmitted before, and transmitting requires a bunch of power. So why didn't this work? This would be here's a bunch of choices, and it's okay to do it wrong. I mean, the radio just turns itself off. It doesn't have enough amperage, so it turns off. It's fine. But give them a safe place to fail, a safe place to get over mic fright and so on. And I think you'd be a lot farther along in your ham radio journey that fast. It took me months to go from study to contact.
Oh yeah, I definitely. I mean, that feel like the practical application. I mean, that 100% sounds to me. That does not sound controversial, but I know. Yeah,
you know these people.
Yes, yes, for sure. Speaking of people, have the friendships in ham radio become just as important as the technology itself?
Oh, for sure. So I'll go to the big ham fests, and I could care less about walking around the ham fest and seeing all the things. I am there to see people and put faces to call signs and tell stories and hang out. And that's I can see all of that stuff on YouTube. I can see all of that stuff by going to websites, like the latest ICOM radio that's coming out that is just a plastic box at Dayton. I've already seen it before I got to Dayton because of YouTube, because of news cycles, because of that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
So when I'm there,
it's like the worst kept secrets, pretty much.
yeah. Well, they're doing it on purpose. I mean, it's all free
Yeah.
marketing. Here we are talking about it, sharing the word of ICOM being in a new radio yet again.
Oh yeah.
They know what they're doing.
Oh yeah. It's
And
it's not called a tease for nothing. Yeah.
Right, right. So I'd rather go and hang out with people. And one of the things that we're working on for, I call it 4 days in August. It's the 4 days before Huntsville Ham Fest. We go to Montesano State Park, and imagine it as summer camp for hams. And we actually do radio stuff together. So we're going to do POTA activations. We're going to build common mode chokes. We're going to solder together, little circuit boards and make sure that they work. And there's going to be somebody there to teach you how to solder. And there's going to be somebody there to teach you how to make satellite contacts. And this year we've got somebody that's going to do astrophotography. So
wow.
that's going to be really cool. It's
yeah,
ham
super
adjacent,
cool.
because ham radio goes into space. And so, that's what I would rather do at the Hamfest than be, in the boneyard looking through used surplus radios. I have too many radios. I will actually go on record as saying that. And I will get more radios, don't get me wrong, but I do have too many.
I mean, as always,
Yeah.
As you do in this hobby, as anyone does.
I'm in a 7 foot by 7 foot ham shack, and I could easily touch about 100 radios in this room.
I'm not at that point yet, but I mean, I'm getting there.
And I don't use them all.
and
It's
it just-
impossible to use them all.
Yep.
But they all have their own little projects and things that I would like to share with the world and teach and show people how to do. And it is what it is. I have a radio that I've had for 2 years that I just turned on to verify that it worked, and that's all I've done. And I need to do more. I want to do more. I don't have time. It's a lot of stuff to do in this hobby.
Yeah, if there was a law against radio neglect, some of them, I mean, some I touch like every day, and then some I get taken to jail for.
Yeah. This is abuse.
But for sure. And that 4 days in August, that sounds really cool. That sounds like something I would definitely like to do, be a part of. That sounds very cool.
Well, everybody's welcome to attend. You don't have to camp at the campsite to do it, but the entire campsite is already reserved.
Okay.
And half of it was reserved the day after Huntsville Hamfest last year. And people drop off the waiting list and whatnot. There's some primitive camping areas that you might be able to double up in. If you go over to the Toads Discord, there's the FDIA room. You can ask if anybody's got a spare bed or room in their campsite or something. But you can easily camp in town and just drive up to the Hamfest. And I think they do a special entry pass for hams, and definitely for active duty or veterans or first responders and stuff. There's a deal to get into the park because it's just a normal state park, but it's a pretty cool state park. There's lots of open area to do things in and overlooks and stuff. And it's about 3,000 foot of elevation. So even though it's August in Alabama, it's not, overwhelmingly hot. It's warm, but it's, got some elevation to it. So it's pretty good.
Definitely. But yeah, well, we'll have to put some of that information on our socials and website as well. That definitely sounds like a great idea, for sure. And is there something outside the hobby that gets completely misunderstood for some people outside of the hobby? Is there stuff that gets misunderstood about ham radio?
My favorite thing about ham radio in today's world in 2026 is, why would you need that? Says the person carrying 7 radios in their pocket. So your cell phone that you have in your pocket, you've got a cellular radio, obviously, but that cellular radio is made up of a bunch of different frequency receivers and transmitters. You've got NFC, you've got Bluetooth, you've got Wi-Fi, you've got all these different sensors and so forth that are in it, and you use it all the time. And if I took your cell phone away from you, you would feel a loss. You would feel a hole in your life when it's gone. Meanwhile, you're trying to make fun of me for playing with radios.
Yep.
No, I actually have less of an addiction than you do.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you have a big old radio. Yeah, just right there. Yeah,
that's the modern day thing. People play with radios all day long.
Yeah.
And don't even think about it.
No.
And they totally take it for granted. Like, radio has become so ubiquitous. Before, it was like people were eavesdropping on things that happened during the war and the astronauts going into space for the first time ever. And that was really, really cool. Like you could do this with some stuff that you made out of, a broken TV you found at the
Yeah.
dump, and you can listen to the astronauts. And if you're really good, you could talk to them if you wanted to, and you can still talk to the astronauts on the space station today.
Yes.
They get on the air sometimes, but I mean, yeah, there's so much that you can do with radio now, and now, like you were talking about FT8 earlier. Well, they've now gotten into high speed stock trading because the internet's not fast enough. We'd rather do it over HF frequencies, point to point during the day, because we can shave milliseconds off of every trade that needs to happen. And where do you think that science came from?
Yeah.
Like ham radio operators are experimenting, and some of them actually do forward thinking, and a lot of them do backward thinking, and some of them just operate, and all of them are welcome. But we're going somewhere with this,
Yeah.
so
100%.
that's pretty cool. I mean,
Oh yeah. Well, I got a two-parter for you of what do you think the amateur radio does really well, and what do you think it could improve on in the hobby?
I think we've kind of talked that one over a little bit. I think the
Yeah.
answer is still the same. Like, what do we do really well? We'd love to encourage and welcome new people into the hobby. What do we do really poorly? We can't stand helping new people in the hobby and trying new things. And it's
Yeah.
it's kind
Asked
of
and
the
answered.
exact
Yep.
same.
Yeah.
Two sides of the same coin there. Like I was telling you about my first ham radio experience being yelled at for having a compromised antenna. Well, it's kind of like me telling you your baby's ugly. Okay. Well, I guess we can't be friends anymore,
Yeah.
like,
I see that. I see no difference. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's like, you see a picture of a newborn baby that just hatched, for lack of better terminology,
Yeah.
less graphic terminology. They're not the most attractive thing in the world.
No.
They've had, a pretty rough first few seconds of life there, and if you've been in the delivery room, they're covered in all kinds of bodily fluids
yeah.
that some of them are
Oh
not
yeah.
even their own. Yeah, that baby's beautiful. Welcome to the world, little one. So happy to have you here.
It's the we need to get back, like the idea of it is beautiful,
Yeah, yeah.
but
And
the
it's the same thing. Like
actual physical thing, no, not so much. Yeah.
that compromise antenna that I tossed into the air, not knowing what I was doing, was my brand new baby that had just came
Yeah.
into the world. That first spark of hope and life of a new ham, and just
Yeah.
crushed hard
Oh,
against
yeah.
the rocks. And there were
Lovely.
other people
Yeah.
who weren't that harsh, but like, and that's we need more people who are more embracing of young, new, fresh faces. And by young, I don't mean age. I mean like young to the hobby. And
Yeah.
they're going to make mistakes. They're going to do things that you've already done that you don't find interesting anymore. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like I haven't made satellite contacts before. I have, but I haven't made satellite contacts before. And my first satellite contact, like when you're the grandfather of your 16th grandchild, and that parent of that 16th grandchild, it's their first baby. Everything that parent is doing is brand new. Everything that parent is doing, you saw with your own children, and now with all of your grandchildren and with all of your friends' children, and you've seen it all about 150 to 200 times. It ain't new to you, but
Yeah.
it's a new, fresh, wonderful experience for them. And that's kind of the lens that I look through all of this on. And I think we need to have a little grace.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. 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 Yeah. I started ham radio at 46. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, and like, and like this July will be my year anniversary of being in ham radio. I've kind of like, stayed along the edges of it, kind of like, oh, what's this? Oh, is it too expensive? Blah blah blah. But then I'm just kind of like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. It sounds so cool to me, and I did it. And like you said, I've experienced the answers to your last question on both sides of it. Yes, 100%. And and one of the things I've noticed that people stay in hobbies when they feel connected with people, obviously, not just the equipment. Sometimes one welcoming interaction is all it takes to make someone feel like they belong, 100%. And one thing people appreciate about your content is that it feels welcoming and centered around the hobby itself. No matter who's watching, the focus tends to stay on learning, experimenting, and enjoying radio. At our group, we're very open about encouraging inclusion and diversity in amateur radio, especially in the hobby, as historically hasn't always felt as welcoming or accessible to everyone. We appreciate creators who make the space feel approachable and to a broader range of people. Was creating that kind of an atmosphere intentional from the beginning? I mean, it sounds like it was, but
Yeah.
yeah,
So my dad worked at the nuclear power plant, and he started off kind of in the lower decks, if you will, and worked his way up to be the person that does all the requalification training that every single employee needs to go through to be on campus, I guess is the right word for it, at a nuclear reactor, a nuclear power generation facility. And he had so much fun teaching the class. He had so much fun, telling jokes and having names and whatnot. And before that, he was a scoutmaster in the Boy Scouts back when that was a different organization. And it was just, watching him come home excited to go to be at work and excited to go to work the next day and that kind of thing was interesting to see. Watching him teach the classes was interesting to see. And you get something as the teacher, there's something inside of you that you get fulfilled by being a teacher.
yeah,
And
definitely.
I've always wanted to do that, but it didn't pay the bills.
Yeah,
The stupid American debt that we all get
yep,
when you're young and dumb. So I couldn't do it for the longest time. And then finally I got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to have any bills anymore. We're going to take care of this, and got rid of all the debts that I had, got rid of all the stuff that I didn't need, and removed a lot of wasted headspace stuff, and was able to get into ham radio and teaching and YouTube and that kind of thing. And I think I got in early enough where you didn't have to be, and I still tell people this today, you don't have to have the most perfect studio, the most perfect setup, the most perfect camera. I think the only thing you really have to have is good audio and the ability to tell a story with a little tiny bit of charisma. And that charisma really is subjective to the audience that you're building. I mean, there are
yeah,
people that are just dry as a desert, and there are people that gravitate towards, like, I would like to sit in a chair and have someone talk to me about, the edges of the wavelengths and that kind of thing for about an hour and a half. And I am not that person. I want to go out and I want to, go camping for the weekend and throw a wire in the tree and make some contacts all across the country and, you know, talk to people, very short conversations with people about whatever, and it's more about making that, like, I did this thing and I want to share that kind of excitement with other people, and then they can take it wherever they want to take it. So, that's definitely, the teaching aspect of it is what I got from, growing up in an environment where somebody taught me something, and then somebody taught other people something and had fun with it. And now I teach things to people and have fun with it. And I try not to talk down to people. That's not really the point. I'm trying to be, like, super encouraging. Like, you can do this. You may have never done it before, but it's approachable. And everything's just, a little bit of practice away from being a skill.
oh yeah, 100%. And I think what makes the strongest, like, communities isn't everybody being identical. It's people being able to share excitement, knowledge, and curiosity across the differences, for sure. And at the end of the day, most people get into amateur radio for the same reason: to learn and connect and experiment.
Hmm.
Most people, and to be part of something larger than themselves, for sure. You've become part of the first impression for a lot of people entering the hobby, whether intentionally or not. And I think there's a lot of real value there for the in creators that make experimentation feel exciting without people feeling intimidated. I think it's something you do very well. How did the temporarily offline channel begin?
So I had a business that I created in 2000 that was a data center, and that had all of my internet connectivity, all of my email, all of my website, all of everything all wrapped up into it. And I sold it in 2006. And when I sold it, I didn't have any of that stuff anymore. So I was literally temporarily offline as I'm looking to create all of this stuff again. So I got a Gmail account. And when you sit down in front of, like, create your new Gmail account, I really didn't want to be, S McGrane 0607 or whatever the numbers happen to be. I didn't like having numbers in my email address. And
Yeah,
so after trying for, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes to come up with a unique name that didn't have numbers in it, that wasn't stupid, that could last the test of time, I may or may not have succeeded, but, like, horse lover 27 or something like that. It's like, that's not terribly professional, even if you are a horse lover. And no offense to any horse lovers, it's just needed an example there.
Yeah.
And
Oh
so
yeah.
I did that, and then as I went through all the different phases of life, I still had that Gmail account because it goes with you and you can just keep it and whatnot. And so when I started the channel, that was what it became, and because it was already the name that I had on my Google account. And so the name itself wasn't all that important, but you just turn the camera on and go. And my first videos are still out there, and they're just as lousy the day that I made them 7 years ago as they are today. But they're still there, and I kind of leave them up as like, you can do this, and you got to get started somewhere, and you got to make something. And it's more about providing value in my
Yeah.
mind than it is about being you can don't let perfect be the enemy of good is the old quote. So get out there, turn the camera on, and every day you make a video, do 1% better kind of thing. And so
Oh yeah.
that's my goal,
Yeah.
is just to be a little bit better each time. And I struggle with doing different things, like the latest batch of Amazon returns that I'm filming on the channel. I took them with me, but the place that I would film them on the road while I was going from Arizona to Dayton by way of Texas and Minnesota and Iowa, it just wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense to film all of them in an abandoned warehouse on a dark side of town with horrible audio and whatnot. So I did film a couple of them there because it's part of the journey. But
Yeah.
as you're watching the channel, you can see that I've gone from point A to point B to point C to point D, and that all makes sense. But I couldn't do like 12 videos in an
Yeah.
echo chamber and have them come out over the next 12 months or 12 weeks or whatever the case may be. So I just, okay, well, that didn't work out. Now I got to find something else to film instead. And that's part of the journey there, is how to figure out how to do all of that stuff.
Well, did you ever expect the channel to resonate in the way that it has?
That was actually the plan, was to get it to resonate the way that it has. So, I mean, all humble that I can add to it. Yes, I expected it to do that. And if it didn't do that, I would be highly disappointed, and I'd be working towards fixing it to be that thing. So, there's a lot of psychology that goes into the background of it. And there's a lot of like how you film this thing this way that makes that thing do that thing kind of thing, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I mean, if I just came on camera and sat there and didn't move and talked in a monotone voice, nobody would watch and nobody would be interested, and I would get people that would tune out very fast. And I've already lost like a lot of people right then and there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so you have to be, just a little bit more of who you actually are in real life. And if you meet me in real life, I'm pretty close to that person to begin with. But you have to, like, you don't think about it yourself, but you see people moving their hands all the time. If you're watching a video and the scene doesn't change, you're not watching that video anymore.
Yeah.
You're immediately going on to doing something else. And people say it's short attention span stuff, but it's not really. It's the fact that when you and I were growing up, there was only 3 TV channels. And on those
Yeah.
3 TV channels,
yeah.
there was only 3 shows that you could watch, and they only came on at 8 p.m. and you had better had all your chores done
Yep.
before 8 p.m. came around, or you couldn't watch them and you missed them forever. And now you can watch whatever you want to watch, whenever you want to watch,
Yep.
whether it's live or not
100%.
live. And there's 60 billion things to choose from. And if you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
get me in the first 17 seconds, I've got other stuff to do.
Yeah.
And that attention span is going to get even shorter of a commodity as more and more people come online to produce more and more things. But it's the nature of the world. I mean, like, in the 1800s, I would have been a doctor or a lawyer, and today I would never be either of those two things.
Yeah.
The 1800s doctor needed to have a saw and some laudanum,
A bottle of
and there was
bourbon,
only
yeah.
6 diseases. Yeah. And if you got a gunshot in the chest with a black powder pistol, great. We're just gonna reach in and pull that out,
Yeah.
or we're just gonna comfort you on your way to the afterlife. And
Here,
today it's like,
yeah,
that's no
bite
big
down
deal.
on this
you know?
belt. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like today there's 6 billion ways to solve that problem, and you're going to walk away from it 99% of the time, kind of thing. The
Yeah.
musket ball thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. And now we have like the total legal landscape that we're in as well. And it's kind of ridiculous how deep stuff is. But, so, ham radio, done. Here we are. I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm not going to be a lawyer. I'm not going to be any of that kind of stuff. Just way too complex, because ham radio is not that complex.
No, and like you said, talking about the
Sarcasm.
psychology or videos and stuff like that. Yeah, like you said, even with the wire up there coming down from your
Yep.
ceiling, you were talking about that. Just you do a very good job of getting people interested. I definitely feel that for sure. And one thing your channel does really well is it makes experimentation feel achievable. And you
Definitely.
make the hobby feel less intimidating and more like, hey, let's figure this out together. That type of thing. And yeah,
If I can do it, you can do it. Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
I'm not special.
but you are, Steve. You're very special.
Well, thank you, Todd. So now
And
you and my mother have said
yeah,
that.
well, she's right. Was creating approachable content something intentional from the beginning? I mean, I pretty much we've answered that question.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Do you think? Yes, we've answered. It does intimidate newcomers some unnecessarily. Yes, we've. It does. I feel like when we've talked about kind of like the gatekeeping in the older. I guess it's not necessarily like you said. It's not an age thing. It's a older mentality. Whether
Oh yeah.
whether a person's our age or heck even in their 20s, they can still have that intimidating mentality to it. Like you said, someone that's been in 3 years and they're but they think they've figured out everything. And it's like, yeah. And then,
Nope, not yet.
well, what makes people comfortable learning from creators online? Do you think?
Well, so there's this thing, that they say all things being equal, otherwise, you will do business with someone that you know, like, and trust above somebody else.
Yep.
So I can get a Ford pickup truck from any Ford dealership all across the country, but I have to get it from somebody. And if there's three Ford dealers in a half-hour radius, I'm going to go to the one that I know best. So it's my mission to be that person that you can know, like, and trust. And so I have to learn how to be a trustworthy person. I have to learn how to be an approachable person. I have to learn how to communicate with people. And engineering types aren't typically those kinds of people that learn how to communicate. It's very,
Yeah.
very black and white for engineering types.
Yep.
And if you stray into the gray, which is where all the experimentation is, which is what the
Yeah.
hobby is about, if you stray into the gray, then you're going down the wrong path and you're doing it wrong and you didn't do it my way and all that kind of stuff. So I try to be very conscious of the fact that, like I test out an antenna with a tuner as an example. Well,
Yeah.
you don't like it to be a proper ham, you should properly set up a properly resonant antenna. Let's just put that on the table. You should. I'm going to should on you for that one. However, when I'm using an automatic antenna tuner to demonstrate how well an automatic antenna tuner tunes, I need an antenna that's not resonant. Why would you demonstrate how a tuner works with a
Yeah.
resonant antenna? Look, this didn't find a match because it was already matched. It correctly didn't find a match.
Sometimes the
So
wrong
don't
thing is
use
the
it.
right thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And, so like I'll set up the most outrageous, crazy antenna possible. I'll put an 8-foot whip with a carpentry clamp on top of a ladder leaning up against the side of my RV with, an odd length of coax running through a metal building into a radio by way of a tuner. Will it tune? Yes. Okay, well, that means that the tuner did its job. Is it efficient? No. Is it the right way to do it? No. Did I make contacts? Yes. And so when I try to do it in that scenario where
Yeah.
like it's okay. Like
Yeah.
my goal, if your goal is to make a very specific, highly targeted contact, this is not the way to do it.
Yeah.
If your goal is to get on the air and make random contacts and experiment with the hobby and work in a compromised situation, compromise being the actual word, not a negative judgmental word,
Yeah.
then this is going to work, and this is how well this is going to work. And look at all the contacts that I made using this non-working system by making it work, by whipping it into shape, by being a ham.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh,
That's
yeah. 100%.
literally where the terminology came from. That's literally where our name came from. We sucked at it, so they called us hams,
Yeah.
and we embraced it, and now we are hams.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
go back to the origins.
Oh, yeah. No, and I love it. I love the stray into the gray. That should definitely be on a T-shirt
I like
somewhere
that, yeah.
or a bumper sticker
I
at the
like
very
that.
least.
I'm gonna make note of that. Ham radio, stray into the gray.
100%. Can you think of the? I know you've made a bunch of videos, and can you think of the most rewarding interaction that you ever had with viewers, or even just give some examples?
Oh, that's a hard one. I've made over 1,000 videos,
Wow.
so there's a lot of them out there,
Yeah.
and I get a fair share of negative comments, and that's just the nature of the beast.
Oh yeah.
But I do get a fair share of positive comments as well, and I really enjoy the positive comments. Like, I didn't know you could do that, or you helped me learn something today that I didn't know before, or you've encouraged me to get on the air, those kinds of things. And I've got a lot of people don't know that you can use an automatic antenna tuner with a CB radio, for example. And you can. I mean,
Yeah.
the antenna tuner doesn't care what it's tuning. It cares that
Yes.
it finds a 50 ohm match. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yes, you can make an antenna tuner that only works on certain bands and only has a certain range of tuning capability, but you can also make one that does more.
Yeah.
And taking a 10.5 meter antenna and tuning it for 10 meters, or a 10-meter antenna and tuning it for 11 meters works. And people are like, I never thought of that. And it's, that little spark, or, now somebody's doing something that they didn't do before, or whatever, is very rewarding. And I love getting the positive comments. I love getting the interaction. I like seeing that some people watch my videos and they comment on every single one of them just because they want to support, getting my content out into the algorithm more, because they want to support the hobby more and that kind of thing. And my philosophy is that you have to provide value in order to get value in return. So I try to provide a lot of value in what I do. And even if that value is just entertainment at times, it's still value. And so
Yeah.
out of 1,000 videos, some are purely entertainment. I do an April Fool's video every year, and it's not a tutorial. It's actually like, this is how not to do
Yes.
something.
Sometimes I forget it's like April 1st, and I see a bunch of that stuff, and I'm just like, oh crap, really? And then I'm like, oh, okay.
This won't
All
work.
right.
Oh, you got me. Yeah. So like this year's April Fool's video, everybody always says that DMR is not real ham radio because they don't know what DMR is, because it is real ham radio. It's actually one of the more push the limits of ham radio that people do,
Yeah.
in terms of taking a business radio system that wasn't designed to do ham radio at all, adapting it to the ham radio space, the whole ecosystem of DMR. And it's kind of, within its limitations, it's a wonderful thing. Trying to be as positive as I can about that. And so they're like, well, that requires the internet, so therefore it's not real radio. So my April Fool's video this year was taking a Baofeng, an Anytone handheld DMR radio, and adapting the SMA to BNC, adapting the BNC to RJ45, and then plugging it into a router directly.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
And this is what specifically I'm talking about. I saw that video, and I was like, I'm a young, impressionable
don't do it.
ham.
No.
And I'm like, oh my God, you can really do this?
No,
And then I'm like,
don't do
oh
it.
crap.
I said it at the end. Don't do it. But
Yeah. And I was like, oh
if you
man.
watch,
You got me.
Yeah.
You got me.
if you watch the demonstration, the length of wire that I used for the antenna connection to the router, and when I made the contact on the video, I did not have it plugged into the router. I just had the
Yeah.
length of wire, the quarter wave on 70 centimeters, close enough, just dangling in free space. So it was a literal antenna, but
You
don't
gave
plug
me
it into
so
a
much
router.
hope, and then to let me
There are
down.
ways to do it without a radio transmitting, RF energy into your router. You can do it with a computer alone, but not that way.
I mean, if I would have sat and thought about it for a second, I'd probably been like, no, this can't happen. But I just saw it, and I was like, oh, really? And then I realized what freaking day it was. And then at the end of the video, I'm like, oh man,
You got me.
got me.
And see, that's fun. Yeah. So the one before that was spirally deployed ground radials for your vertical antenna to create spin DX. And so after I demonstrated how to set them all up and showed the nice spiral on the ground, I'm like, let's disconnect the antenna, go inside and see how well it worked. I literally said, let's disconnect the antenna and see how well it worked. And, just wanted to see how far I could push the limits of like, this is not what you're supposed to do, and have people still believe it. And honestly, to tell you the truth, having spirally polarized radials probably does do something for your signal, but I'm not that kind of scientist, and I don't have that kind of energy to prove the 1/4,000th of a % difference in propagation that couldn't be otherwise proven just by, being Tuesday versus being Wednesday.
Yeah. You definitely got me on that one. Do you enjoy the filming aspect or the editing part more of your videos?
Editing is kind of a chore.
Yeah.
A lot of times I can film a video in an hour and I'll take about an hour to edit it and then I'll take another hour to package it.
Yeah.
You know, the thumbnail, the title, the description and all that jazz. And it does take some time. Like if I do a how to FT8 video, it's a week of figuring out the radio and all the right settings in the radio, and then it's another 2 or 3 hours worth of filming all that stuff that I just did in note taking. And then after that, it's putting the video together and getting what we call B-roll, which is like when I say, I click this button in the radio PTTs, and then you see the camera angle switch to the
Yep.
radio PTTing. That's like I said all that knowing that I was going to do that thing later. And then when I'm editing the video, I've got to go, all right, stop editing, grab the camera, turn around, film the light coming on the radio, and then bring that over to the editing bench and then stitch it into the video and make sure that it's not so long that it tramples over the next bit of footage, but is long enough that you can tell that it's actually gone from off to on and then from on to off again and so on. And trying to keep it visually interesting. Like if I want to show you how a waterfall works on a radio, I can't just point the camera at the radio and just watch the waterfall go down. You know, you have to that 8 minutes of you staring at the screen of a 7300 or a 705 is not interesting with a voiceover in the background. So you just got to figure out how all that different stuff works.
Yeah. And we'll.
So there's some interesting stuff in stitching a video together to make it work. And
Yeah.
YouTube gives you this thing called a retention graph. So I can tell where people left the video, where they stopped watching. And so there's usually this immediate cliff in the beginning where it's a bug, quote unquote. Like you'll click a video and save it to your watch later queue. Well, that counts as a watch, and you watched for 3.5 seconds and then left, and that quote unquote hurts the algorithm, But I hope they have a little bit of grace for that. After that initial cliff, then there's this slow, gradual go until the end as people leave, as they've finally gotten the answer that they wanted to get from the video. They finally connected the meaning to what they thought it was going to mean. And then sometimes you can see a little spike in the graph where they've gone back and watched that thing again, where I did something and demonstrated something that clicked but didn't click 100%, so they had to watch that part again. And then you can see at the outro in the video where people just, oh, he's doing the outro, he's doing the wrap up, goodbye, gone,
Yeah.
And the old fashioned way when we were growing up, it's first I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you what I just finished telling you.
Yep.
That doesn't work on YouTube. Now it's like immediately I'm doing the thing. Like you've already seen the title, you've already seen the thumbnail, you already know what you're trying to get. So I don't need to tell you what I'm going to tell you. You already know what I'm going to tell you. I just need to get right into doing it. And then I need to get right back out at the end. And the more I get better at doing that, the more YouTube sends my videos out to more people, which then creates more hams, which then gives us more people to talk to on the air. So YouTube is the #1 search engine on the internet right now. So it's the way to reach new hams.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's creators that make videos on how to watch YouTube videos and like get to the, like they talk about how to get to the point of videos. Like, don't watch the first 30 seconds of videos because it's always just the introductions and stuff like that. It's like it's like they're fighting. It's like the YouTube community is fighting against itself, basically.
Yep. And now it's all changing because of all the AI generated content, and so now it's I've got to adapt to that, which is cool. Like it's a constantly stimulating exercise.
I mean,
And so like the new adaptation is people are watching on their TV and they want to get back to 1980s sitcom style of television instead of how-tos or whatnot. And if you're watching How to FT8 on your television, you're not in front of your radio. So I try to make the video about how to FT8 something where you can sit in front of your radio and push buttons.
Yeah.
And then I also try to make other videos where you can just kind of watch on TV and enjoy them. Like I'm reviewing verifying that an Amazon return works before I put it back out into the market and save it from e-waste. That's one you can watch on your television, and you don't really learn something other than the radio worked and why this didn't get stuck in somebody's ham shack forever as a loved piece of equipment. Why did it get returned, kind of thing. So know what your video is before you start making
Charles
it.
Darwin studies always they hold true. I mean, everything evolves. 100%.
Well, that's
Uh,
actually really interesting. The whole natural selection thing applies not just to the development of a species, it applies to the development of a system inside of what a species does. So, like, television was a thing, and we all watched TV at 8 p.m., and that was natural selection. We naturally selected
yep,
8 p.m. as the time to sit down, and the day is over, and we're watching TV. And now that's not the case anymore. Natural
yep,
selection has chosen a different path. And
yep.
it's really weird to think of like just systems, like we go into the office, that's natural selection. We work from home, that's natural selection. It's really like psychology, it just excites me.
Oh yeah. And we'll end with your content stuff. What's the hardest part of running your channel?
Trying to overcome the naysayers is the hardest part of running it. There's a lot of people out there that their communication skills aren't that great. And it's more like, why didn't you do it my way?
Yep.
Or you did that wrong, even though I didn't watch the video to find out that you did it right, and not only did it right, you proved that you did it right, kind of thing. So that's the hardest part, but that's overcome a lot by just people watching. I mean, out of I drop a video that gets 10,000 views on it, I get 2 negative comments and 150 positive comments. So that's the balance. That's what you have to find is that
Yeah.
these very vocal minority that are saying mean, hateful, hurtful things is not who your audience really is. Those are people who shouldn't have watched in the first place. And then they actually told you that they didn't watch. So, you just
Yeah.
have to
It's like I
like,
think you
okay,
did
yep,
though, buddy.
yeah, yep, here you go.
But yeah, yeah. And that's usually there's other reasons why the negative commenters are commenting, and it's for their own benefit.
Yep.
And I think people sometimes underestimate how much invisible work goes into content creating. I mean, especially the technical content, like you were just talking about, because you're not only building the project, you're trying to explain it and clearly while you're filming everything. Have you ever had a project fail spectacularly while recording?
Yeah, those are the ones you don't get to see most of the time.
I figured
Like
that'd be the
I
answer.
can't do a video. I can't come up with a concept for a video of how to FT8 as an example and show you how to not FT8. And for a long time, I was doing a live stream where we failed live. And that was kind of the mission was this, I called it real-time ham radio. We're going to try something that we've never done before. And I had to tell people, like, they would come into the comments like, this is not a polished tutorial and you didn't tell me what to do. I'm like, that was the point, that this was live action. We're going to do this thing that we've never done before and figure it out as we go along, and warts and all kind of thing. So I don't mind failing on camera, but
Yeah.
some of the things like, can this radio do this thing? Baofeng just released a new radio that's open transmit from 400 to 480 megahertz and has a weird antenna connector and does some data modes that can't be done in those frequency ranges. 400 to 480, if you guys don't know, is public safety, land mobile radio, business frequencies, some of the cell phone bands, above some of the not cell phone bands, some of the ham radio bands. Above the ham radio bands, it's FRS and GMRS and a bunch of other frequencies. And because of the way the rules work, you can't actually transmit on the radio. And as an uneducated consumer, you could be breaking the rules by doing it. And as a quote unquote pillar of the community that I aspire to be, I can't even key up on the radio in order to demonstrate that it works because it's got a non-standard antenna connector. I have to go, buy parts that cost more than the radio to build a dummy load adapter to connect a dummy load to it and then connect a test set to it and test out what it's actually doing. And even at the end of all of that exercise, it doesn't make the radio legal. It
Yeah.
just means that I now know that I can or can't use it on the ham bands as a licensed ham radio operator. But those are kind of weird things. So like that video took a while to figure out what the story angle was and how to get it out there and try not to talk bad about it, but also educate people that they probably shouldn't do these things. And and I get it. There's no reason for the public to know this. They buy a piece of, you go to the grocery store and you buy a steak. You expect it to be a steak and edible and whatnot. You go to the candy store, the electronic store, and you buy a radio and you expect it to radio. I
Yep.
expect to go to channel 2 and key up and talk to somebody who's also on channel 2. Like that's consumer level electronics, not ham radio science level electronics.
Yeah.
And the world's made up of all kinds of people, and the people on Amazon buying a Allervitz AT2 radio shouldn't be expected to know that. And
Yeah.
it's okay. But
Yep.
they also do need to know that if they're going to be buying that and, be an informed consumer kind of thing. So you got to find that happy medium, and also not, like it's Baofeng's baby. It's not ugly. It's just different,
Yeah.
So back to what we were talking about earlier. So, interesting stuff. Just got to figure out. I try to be positive. I try not to tell people, I don't do the typical influencing thing. I'm aware that I do influence people, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I'm not saying this is the best radio, buy this radio because I said so. I'm saying watch this radio do this thing, and if you're interested, you can buy it. And some
Yeah.
people understand that, and some people think that I am still like trying to sell the thing. I'm like, no, I just showed you that you can FT8 with this radio,
Yeah.
and you made the decision to buy it. I didn't. I mean, yes, you can do it, and at the end of the day, I have proven it to be successful, and therefore, it's probably a strong buy. But there's room for better, and there's room for worse, and there's room for buying worse and enjoying it, and there's room for buying
Yeah.
better and enjoying it. And that's not up to me to decide. That's up to you to decide what's better
Yeah.
or worse for you, for all of the reasons that it's better or worse for you. $1,500 radio versus a $200 radio. They're both good for the right person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking about the things going wrong, like on your live videos, and then like you said, your other videos that stay on the cutting room floor. I mean, you make and show those mistakes, quote unquote.
I
So
do, yeah.
like we don't have to, yeah, and like
Yep.
it's definitely like appreciated, for sure.
Well, thank you.
And honestly, one of the healthiest things for technical communities is when experienced people are willing to show the mistakes and the imperfect outcomes, because that's how real learning happens. Like failure is part of like the learning
Yep.
process, 100%. And
The only time
nobody
that
gets
you've
into
actually
radio and
failed
electronics
is
or STEM fields already knowing everything. Most of us
right.
already learn by getting things wrong repeatedly until
That's
until
okay.
eventually things they work.
Yep. The only time you've ever failed is when you've given up on fixing something. And
Yeah.
even then, that might still be a good, like I don't want to fix this, as a
Yeah.
positive decision is no longer a failure. But like
Yeah.
I tried this thing, it didn't work, and I quit, and I hate myself. That's probably the only failure that's out there.
Yeah.
Don't do that. I did this thing, it didn't work, and I chose to fix it and learn, and now I'm a better
Yeah.
person. Or I chose not to fix it, and I learned that I'm a better person for not doing that. Like
Yeah.
three ways out of the same problem, and two of them are successes.
Yeah. Failure is kind of like a harsh word. It's like
Yeah.
it's a didn't work. It's not a failure. Yeah.
I learned what not to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because every ham has at least one story that starts with, "Well, I definitely wired that backwards." Yeah,
Right? I cut it twice and it's still too short.
yeah, exactly. And we'll move into the your making your the Toads interface. What's the appeal of designing or modifying equipment instead of simply just buying something ready made?
Well, both of those are appealing things, don't get me
Yeah,
wrong, but to me, there's a certain satisfaction in taking something and doing something that few other people can do. I mean, everybody can do anything, but not everybody can do everything. If you can, caveman out the distinction between those two. And so, like, there's even things that I can't do. So when I first started down the path of that digital interface, it's this cheap USB sound fob that you can get
yep,
on Amazon, and then you have to take and modify it. And all this thing is a PCB that is thick enough to fit into the USB socket, USB-A socket. That's how old it is.
yeah,
And then on the other side, it has two audio plugs, one for audio in, one for audio out. Well, the chip that's on it has general purpose I/O ports, and hams have adapted those general purpose I/O pins to do the PTT, push to talk on a radio, or the carrier operated squelch. And on a regular consumer electronics perspective, that's the volume up and volume down button, or whatever the case may be. But we reassigned it to something else. And then you can solder to those little teeny tiny pins with your microscope. I mean, maybe you can, I can't. And that's how I figured out that I couldn't make this thing. And so it took me down the path of learning how to make PCBs, and I'm still very, very green at it, and have a lot of friends that are helping me do better. And so that's where the Toads digital interface came from, was I don't want to solder this thing ever again. So why don't we take a USB port, USB-C now, because the world has adapted, overcome, grown, natural selection again, and expose those things as pin headers instead of as 3.5 millimeter TRRS jacks, tip ring sleeve jacks. And then you can you can use DuPont headers and so on, DuPont wires and headers and so on in order to complete this circuit. And then from there, it grew again into, well, why don't we just complete the circuit for you? And then from there, it grew into, why don't we complete the circuit on other radios? And so you can take that sound interface that I made, the Toads digital interface, and you can put it inside of, I'm looking for one right now that's available. It's on the bench behind me. I'm looking for one, that you can put inside of a radio directly so that you expose the USB-C port on the back of the radio by cutting a hole in it. So if you get one of those 10-meter export radios and you find the points inside the radio to tap for audio in, audio out, push to talk, ground, and so on, you can now do FT8 on a 10-meter export radio that isn't really designed for it. The other way to do that is to wire it into the microphone connector and wire it into the speaker output and so on. And perfectly, more than one way to do it, and perfectly happy for you to do it any way you want. Or you can use my tool and, get a little farther down the process. So,
Yeah.
Just taking it, one step farther, bringing older radios or radios that weren't designed to do digital modes onto digital modes.
It's a very cool interface board. As far as like the kind of packaging it up and doing the whole selling process and development, did the development process take a long time for it?
It did, because in the middle of all of that, I decided to sell my house and go full-time RV, and now I don't know how to ship products as I'm different places across the country, and I don't know how to inventory products inside of a tiny space, and I don't have the warehouse space or the assembly line space or so on. So how do we overcome those obstacles? And then finally I just what, we're just going to do this. We're just going to make this happen, and we'll figure it out. And kind of fail in public, like you had said earlier, like this may or may not work. So we did it to, we sold the Toads digital interface to channel members, channel insiders who have a little bit more empathy for, like, I want to see this thing succeed. And so they were my guinea pigs to help me iron out all the processes and so on. And we figured all that out. And when I was driving from Arizona to Texas to Iowa to Minnesota to Ohio back to Texas, I carried all the stuff in the back of my truck, my laptop, my label printer, my shipping bags, my inventory of product. And, we get up in the morning, we check for orders, we fulfill orders, we get in the truck, and as we're driving to the next state, stop by a post office along the way and drop them all in the mail. And so sometimes they come from Texas, and sometimes they come from Arizona, and sometimes they come from Iowa. And, we figured it out. We got it working. And so then we can expand the product line a little bit more. So we brought out the AIOC, the all-in-one cable for your K connector type radios. And we brought out the AIOC is made by Simon, another ham in the community. And we brought out the DI8 board, the digital interface for Zygu radios, and working on newer products to be able to fulfill in that same, I'll ship you a little tiny gadget that helps you along your radio journey to the next milestone kind of thing. And hopefully we'll have a reason to not be in an RV anymore, I guess, would be the answer. Like, this is working so well that we have to, continue down this path instead of that path. And that's how life works. It takes you in a different direction, and that's part of the journey. I say an adventure is what you get when you didn't get what you planned for. So
I'm plain and simple. Yeah. And I think definitely this project reminds people that amateur radio is still just a playground for experimentation, 100%.
Yep.
And a couple of philosophical questions on STEM. I mean, I know the answer to this. I think I know what you're going to say, but why do you think building and experimenting still matters?
I think it never stopped mattering.
Yeah.
We need to, the race needs to evolve. The species needs to evolve. We're too busy arguing amongst ourselves about things that really don't exist or don't matter anymore. And that's doing a disservice to all of us when we should be, reaching for the stars and going somewhere and innovating and doing new things and finding better ways. And those better ways do change, again, natural selection, like we talked about earlier. I mean, there's a time when we all rode around in horse and buggies, and now we all drive cars, and there'll be a time when we're not driving cars.
Yep.
I imagine that as a country full of people that own cars today, before I die, we will not be allowed to drive anymore unless
Yeah.
you have a very specific, special requirement that can't be done by automated driving. And you'll get to the point where you don't own a car. You'll get the app on your cell phone and you'll say, I need a car in my driveway at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning to take me to the airport. And when you step out your door at 7 a.m., there's a car sitting in your driveway that's already programmed to take you to the airport. You get in
Yeah.
the back seat, you arrive at the airport, the car goes away.
Yep. I definitely think that's where it's going. I am
Yeah.
disappointed that I won't get to do the flying car. I thought for sure when I was a kid we'd have flying cars by now, but yeah, that's a disappointment.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Jetsons. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And is there a skill that you think amateur radio teaches people that they may not realize?
It's hard sitting on this side of the table and hearing the stuff that I hear all the time, but amateur radio teaches people that it's okay to experiment. And we're sort of losing some of that as
Yeah.
the hobby matures. It used to be you build your own radio or you don't have one. And now it's perfectly acceptable. And I agree, it is perfectly acceptable to go to Amazon and buy a complete working radio station and
Yeah.
get on the air. And it's still important to do both of those things. And not everybody has to do both of those things. But, amateur radio does give you the encouragement. I mean, I did this when I was younger. I had a fish tank, and you get the book for how to take care of the fish. And one of the things that it says is, now that you're done taking care of your fish and you have a successful operating ecosystem, you need to start breeding them. Okay, I mean you don't, but like
Yeah.
that is the next natural evolution of
Yeah.
of the hobby of keeping fish is to breed more fish and take care of more fish and so on. Like the owning a ranch, the next evolution of owning horses is to breed horses, and the next evolution of having breedable horses is to have some way to productively make use of those horses. I don't know what the proper terminology is. It isn't going to offend somebody for that, but the proper use is whatever the rancher decides the proper use is, and whatever society agrees isn't cruel and unusual to animals, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you can't just keep a fish tank forever. The fish are going to die,
Yeah.
and that's just the circle of life kind of thing. So you
Yep.
need to breed more fish, and as hams, we need to breed more hams, and that means we need to be embracing in the hobby and whatever the hobby naturally selects itself out to be. There's that phrase again. And if that's building radios, if that's operating radios, if that's the prepper angle, if that's the talk to the space station angle, if that's day trading in the stock market as the experimentation that we're going into now, embrace it. It's not going to be forever. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Let's do what the hobby needs now, and then let it evolve. And that does mean that some things will go away, but if you've ever been on the bands, you know that like there are old boat anchors that are still on the air, still doing AM transmissions.
Yep.
The only thing that you can't do in ham radio that you used to be able to do, I believe, is spark gap. And that's because it's sloppy and messy and not in anybody's best interest anymore. At the time, it was wonderful because it was all we had. But
Yep.
now we've learned, and you shouldn't be doing that anymore. But AM radios, old tube designs, let's do it. And they still work today. You can still get on the air, you can still make contacts, and your brand new ICOM 7300 Mark II will contact that old boat anchor on AM, and there you go.
Yeah.
Like you've made the contact. Both of you have enjoyed your hobby, and that's the important part.
Yep. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize how many real world skills grow out of like hobbies like this, and with the troubleshooting, problem solving, communication, patience,
Teamwork,
those
yeah.
things carry over everywhere, like to all
Yep.
facets of like life. And like the hands-on experimentation is something we deeply care about in an organization because those moments they build confidence. A lot of people discover they're capable of far more technical problem solving
Yes.
than they ever imagined they once were, and successfully building something, troubleshooting something, and make a system that works with their very own hands.
Yep. So there's this saying that I like. It's wisdom comes from experience, but experience comes from failure.
Yeah.
And so you have to fail a lot, and you have to be okay failing a lot, and you have to have someone that encourages you to pick up and get on after you failed. And that's, where good parenting comes in. And I think I had really good parents that encouraged me to experiment and learn and try and make mistakes and then fix the mistakes that I made. And, one of the things that I did early on was I ruined my parents' personal computer by removing the boot files from the front of the hard disk and then defragging the hard disk to fill up all of that space and make the computer run faster. And I was so satisfied with myself. I had job well done. Shut the computer down, turned it off, parked the hard disk heads because that was a thing before turning it off, obviously. And then the next day it didn't work anymore because I had very carefully made it so it wouldn't boot. But it wasn't the end of the world. It was fixable. And my dad
Yeah.
didn't yell at me, didn't get mad at me, didn't argue with me, didn't punish me, quote unquote. What he did was he said, "You have to fix this."
Yep.
Okay. So I learned how to fix it, and it took me like 3 months. It took me all summer that year between grades in grade school to figure out how to do it. But I did figure out how to do it, and that gave me that failure gave me the experience and the wisdom to have the skills to repair computers and have the talents to know that I can recover from failures. And went on to a wonderful career and taught my kids the same thing, and now I'm teaching my grandkids the same thing. And I think it's important to be okay with making mistakes and taking responsibility for them. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. We'll transition here into like the future of the hobby here real quick. One of the realities, amateur radio is a hobby that carries a lot of history and tradition, which can be a wonderful thing. But traditions also sometimes create environments that unintentionally feel closed off to people who don't already fit the expected mold. So part of the growing the future amateur radio means asking how we preserve the best parts of the hobby while also making space for new voices, new perspectives, and new communities. What excites you the most about the future of amateur radio?
The unknown. Where are we going? What's going to be happening next? There's some things I think that ham radio needs to do to become relevant instead of continuing to stick in the old ways. The old ways are important. I'm not saying they're not important. I'm not saying we shouldn't still do the old things, but we definitely need new things. And it's really interesting to look at something like Meshtastic as an example, which is not ham radio, but is very ham radio adjacent and
Yeah.
uses radio equipment to do things
Yep.
that we already did with APRS.
Yeah.
But APRS fell out of favor. It fell out of the spotlight. And it fell out of the spotlight so hard that somebody replaced APRS with an APRS-like thing, not knowing that APRS existed. And maybe they did, don't get me wrong, but work with the metaphor here. And so now we have this whole new technology that does position reporting and sends short messages back and forth, which you can then use to send weather reports and, beacon objects like, your local repeater and stuff like that, that could have been done over ham radio. And the encouraging thing is that you don't require a license to do it, but also, hopefully that helps people like bridge into like where we're going next and what the hobby can do next. And, we're starting to get into AI now as an example and vibe coding. And vibe coding has its drawbacks and it also has its positive things. There's situations where like I'm not an artist in the traditional like draw a picture and
Yeah.
have it look like something more than a disjointed stick figure kind of thing. But AI helps me to make better looking thumbnails that are more artistic than my
Yeah.
own individual talents do allow, which then allows me to reach out to more people to bring them into the hobby of ham radio and figure out that it's encouraging. So is AI bad? Sure. Is it good? Sure.
Yeah.
And
I mean, definitely.
you know,
I 100% agree with that.
in the last 4 months, in the last 3 months, I know of at least 20 different AI vibe coded ham radio apps. And these were people that did not know how to program. And all of the programmers that knew how to program that made ham radio programs, in case you hadn't noticed, they all kind of look like they died in the 1980s, the programs. Because they did. Those people went on to different parts of the hobbies or they retired from their day jobs and didn't feel like touching a computer program interface, an integrated development environment ever again. And, they're totally allowed to do that, but no one stepped up to fill those reins, to grab those reins and take off into the next generation. And as a result, APRS went away in the public eye, and Meshtastic now came in the public eye. And so now we've got these vibe coded AI apps that are taking over, which is good. And you got to start somewhere. And
Yeah.
so those people will learn how to code as a result of that. And then together as a group of people, we will make better code. And hopefully will rekindle some of that flame into amateur radio. So a friend of mine, Joe K5YVY, made an APRS propagation tool that just listens to his own radio in his own yard and hears APRS packets and then maps them as to how far away they are. And then he's also gone into overlaying the weather on top of that. And Joe's got a computer background, but he's not a developer,
Yeah.
and that's okay. That's an
Yeah.
app that we didn't. That's one app that you had like 18 or 20 different apps that didn't visualize that thing in that way in your neighborhood, which is, it didn't connect it to you. So there was an APRS propagation map out there, but it was just what propagation looked like. It wasn't what your personal propagation, what you personally heard. The fact that you might be able to make a long distance tropospheric ducting contact on 2 meters voice where you never would have been able to do that before. Now you can key that into your thing. Dr. Tamitha Skov, for example, was talking about the sunspot, solar cycle, solar weather maps type thing. And she's the one that kind of awakened me. Like, that is taken from one location, not yours. And so even though you see that the SFI might not be good to make ham radio contacts on that day, that's in the location where that was measured, not where you did it. So somebody is going to vibe code away, or somebody's going to real code away, whichever way they do it. I don't care, as long as it gets out there for you to have the tooling and the equipment and the instrumentation in your ham shack to determine what the SFI numbers are. And this is like sci-fi stuff. I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
possible to do it today, but it's possible to get to the other end of this evolution starting
Yeah.
today. And I think that's, where we can go in this hobby. And like things like FT8, there's a lot of hate out there about FT8, but there was a time when the propagation was so low that we needed to have a new tool. And Joe Taylor
Yeah.
stepped up with his team to make this new tool. And now, you can work all states in a weekend. You can work all
Yep.
states in an afternoon if you try hard enough. And
Yeah. I mean, we're
I
at the
I
mercy of the
love
sun. Yeah.
FT8. Yeah, and I like it not because it's computer generated contacts and it takes all of the personality out of, ham radio, and you're missing out. Yes, you are missing out on a lot of the hobby, but you're also missing out on this part of the hobby if you don't do FT8. You can do both.
Yeah.
FT8 is not destroying your ability to do
No.
CW or AM or sideband or FM or whatever. It's just a new way to enjoy the hobby, and I use it to very quickly model, did this antenna actually work? Like, you can bury an antenna a foot underground, and can you still make contacts? FT8 is a quick way to do that. Like, people heard my signal and they gave me legitimate signal reports of what their equally bad or amazingly better antenna can do. So I get a really quick turnaround, really quick feeling about, this actually does the thing. This is pretty cool. And now I can go down, like, I've determined really quickly, is it worth doing more research to figure out if this is good enough to actually like sell shovels and wire to make antenna kits out of, or is this so bad that I, like, that was fun to do, but never again kind of thing. It didn't work out really well. And it's experimentation. It's where we need to go.
Well, that's a cool aspect because it's like, because most of the time people are their minds are trained on, like, you want to see keep finding the best way to do everything, like the best. Where like it's kind of cool seeing like how much you can get away with like as like find the worst possible way to do things and
Right.
still be able to communicate. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's actually more enjoyable. Like,
Yeah.
it's almost easier with 200 plus years of development of radio science to know what the best way is. But that best way is only the best way for that one very highly specific thing. I mean, you would talk about resonant antennas. A resonant antenna is technically only resonant on one single frequency. Yes, you can make it broadbanded enough to make it work on multiple frequencies, but the definition of resonance is right here, right now, not right here and also right here and also right here and
Yeah.
also right here. So you
Yeah. So
might
if
be
you
able
can
to get a
get an FT8 contact on a sewing needle, like in a crawl space or something like that.
yeah. Well, we talk about the saltwater amplifier. There's a guy that I saw, and I don't know who it was. I wish I still knew who it was and could find the video of him doing it. He made a antenna. You've heard about the saltwater amplifier effect. He made an antenna out of saltwater. He had a variable speed pump that could pump a column of water, would like literally, shoot a stream of water in the air. but it could control how much pressure was behind the stream. So the stream was, 10 feet long, 14 feet long, 65 feet long, starting to sound like, you know, wavelengths of an antenna long kind of thing. And once he was able to tune that pump down to create a repeatable length of water column filled with all of the minerals that you find in saltwater, it became a radiator for an antenna. No, it's not practical at all.
No.
And maybe for some kind of emergency situation, but I mean, you need to bring power, you need to bring the pump, you need to have an ocean next to you, kind of thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
you
yeah.
know,
Just dropping
not
drop a
terribly,
cable in the
you know,
ocean. Yeah.
yeah, not terribly practical, but also fun.
Yeah.
Like I think that's amazing that stuff like that was done, and that kindled a little bit of excitement in me, and maybe I want to try that out, and you know, see if I can do it better, or see if I can make even worse than it already is, or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. I think that's amazing, and that's to me that's what ham radio is all about, is
Well,
experimenting on that
just
kind of
like
crazy
just
stuff.
pushing the extremes like you do, like you're talking about. Yeah, just finding the extremes, finding ways in the extremes. And I think amateur radio's at such an interesting moment like right now because simultaneously it's deeply traditional, but it's also very rapidly evolving. And
Yep.
I mean, because you got decade-old equipment operating alongside SDRs
hmm
and digital modes, live streams, and online communities.
We have
Um,
decades old SDRs now too.
what was that? Sorry.
We have decades old SDRs now also.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Software defined radios. They're not
Yeah,
new anymore, and to hate on something that's already a decade old means that you let that much of the hobby go past you. And that's okay. I mean, you don't have to, but I mean, you could,
yeah,
instead of being angry with it. Oh,
yeah,
those SDRs,
exactly.
they'll never work. Super heterodyne or die. And meanwhile, somebody before you is like, tube radio or die. You're like, okay, yep, that'll happen.
Yeah. Do you think the social platforms like YouTube are helping or hurting modernize amateur radio culture? Kind of, I think it's kind of like both.
I think it's more helpful than it is harmful. There are some people out there that are intentionally creating harm or unintentionally creating harm. And then there are people out there, hopefully I'm one of them, that is creating this sense of, you can do this and
You are, Steve.
encouragement. And thank you. I'm trying to be humble at the same time. But it is my mission to get up every day and encourage somebody to do
Yeah,
something with amateur radio, whatever that happens to be that day. And I'm not always successful at it, but I'm also, more successful than I'm unsuccessful at it, I hope, is the mission. And I get lots of feedback, so I'm not asking for sympathy or anything. I'm trying never mind. We've gone too far down that sideways rabbit hole. The point
yeah,
is that there are people who are harming and there are people who are helping, and I think that it doesn't matter. I think getting the word out is important. What
yeah,
is it? I don't care what you say about me as long as you spell my name right, kind of thing. That's where we are. If nobody was talking about it, it would be forgotten very fast. And so we need people to talk about it. Whether they're right or wrong, we need people to talk about it. It just gets the conversation going.
yeah. Yeah. Definitely, I definitely agree. And it's like the communities that adapt to the reality are probably the ones that will thrive long term. Yeah. All right. Well, getting close to wrapping up here, Steve. I appreciate you staying on this long with me. I will get
Yeah,
just
sure.
kind of a little something I want to try out here real quick. Kind of a lightning round.
Uh-oh.
We covered philosophy, technology, community, and probably enough radio theory to make the FCC nervous. So it's let's. How about we do a little lightning round here? I'll just rattle off a few questions. You can give a real short answer, and then we'll wrap it up. So, what is your favorite band to operate?
HF is 20 meters.
Okay, analog or digital?
Yes.
No, you have to pick one. No, I'm just kidding.
There's a time and a
CW
place for
voice or
everything.
data? Yes, again.
Um, Again, it really depends on what you're doing. I love doing like voice POTA activation, and I love doing digital radio for experimentation because it's very, very quick to get a response. I mean, I could call CQ into the void for hours on end on analog voice modes, and not necessarily get the answers that I could by sending 30 seconds of FT8. I can tell in 30 seconds that I have been heard and somebody's actually trying to respond. And I can tell not just like one person heard me, but how many people all over the planet heard me out of the people that are reporting and get good results. So yes, is the answer to that one.
I figured. I know we talked about your first radio. What's your favorite radio you've ever owned?
My favorite radio has to be the Zygu 6100, and not because it's a great radio, but because it kindled some spark in me that didn't exist yet, and it didn't live up to all of the expectations I had for it, and some of that's on me and some of that's on them. But they're also, making the best that they can. It's not the best radio. Don't get me wrong there. But it was a leap forward in technology to have a radio that had a Linux computer built into it that you could turn on and actually do 100% of normal FT8 with inside of the radio while also still being able to do voice and CW and so on inside of the radio. Not the best at anything, but not, it served a greater purpose than just being a radio. And I thought that was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
What is the most underrated ham radio accessory?
The lanyard.
What?
Make sure you don't drop your radio. A lot of people just grab that and just toss it. Accessory is such a broad category. In a hobby of
Yeah.
1,000 hobbies, that means there's 10 million accessories out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could be self-serving, a little self-promotion. The Toad's digital interface is the most
Yeah.
underrated in the hobby.
Hey,
You
hey,
should buy one today,
that's what we're here for. Yeah.
right?
Coffee during your operating sessions, or what keeps you going during operating?
Uh, Actually, what keeps me going is talking to people on the other end, like the accomplishment. So if I'm doing a contest, making the QSOs, racking up the points, velocity, of QSOs per hour or something. If I'm doing a Parks on the Air activation, I want to see like how fast can I go from leaving my home to coming back to my home successful. Or I'm always mission oriented. In case you hadn't seen that in the videos, like will this do this thing in this amount of time? Will this
Yep.
do this thing? Like can I do a kilo, 1,000 contacts at a park in a weekend and still like maintain a healthy marriage kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because yes, you can, but can you also, like take your RV and go a state away and activate a state park and keep your wife happy and, you know, get the mission accomplished? And then how do you do it? What antennas do you do? Did it work? I brought, two different radios, three different antennas. And at the end of the day, I wound up using one antenna and one band. And then I would during dinner time, I do FT8 because I can kind of do that while I'm chewing and not offend the people I'm talking to. And there was some downtime where I had to go and, communicate with the outside world or go visit a local museum or something like that. And we were very successful. And also knowing that you can't just make 1,000 contacts, turn the radio off and go home, because some of those are duplicate contacts. How many of those are duplicate contacts? How many extra contacts besides 1,000 contacts do you need to make in order to actually make 1,000 contacts? Because if I made 1,000 raw contacts and 200 of them were duplicates, then it's possible. And a lot of people would, like, if I changed bands, the same people would contact me. And if I crossed the day night terminator as far as POTA goes, the late shift versus day shift kind of thing, people will wait. And that was actually really cool to learn. If you're at the crossing of the time zone, the crossing of the timeline, people will stay there and wait. So I made like 100 contacts right before late shift, and then the exact same 100 people contacted me right after late shift. So they got two parks in their log, because it's 2 different days, so 2 different days worth of operating within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I lost 100 contacts on my mission, but I'm not sore about it. But like, I need to account for that, and so we made it happen. It was pretty cool. Kilo in a weekend can be done.
Yeah.
It was work.
What has been your messiest project bench moment?
So I have been working on all back to the Toad's digital interface stuff. I have been working on this for a while, and the Redivis RT95 radio is kind of the one that sparked it, because that one has a microphone that has an RJ45 connector, and there is a speaker in the microphone, which means I've got microphone, push to talk, speaker, and ground all on one connection. And unfortunately, they interleaved the connection. I think it's the up button on the microphone is also the audio connection. And so in their design of the radio, you're never going to push up to change channels while you're talking on the radio. Makes perfect sense, fully allowable. I appreciate that they did that thing. But in my world where I would like to push to talk and possibly do other things at the same time, that became a problem, and I actually fried the radio doing it. And that project is still on the bench today to complete because it's turned into such a different, odd evolution that's gone in so many different directions and is still unfinished. So like right now, this is the current iteration of it, is trying to get this perf board to do the thing. So I've got the header on the bottom for the Touch digital interface, which was created because of this. And then I'm trying to learn, I've never done perf board before. So I'm trying to learn how to solder onto perf board and make it. And I wanted to try and just do solder trails as the
Okay.
way to connect, and that's probably not the way to do it. So don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Just get yourself some, you know, 20 22 gauge, 28 gauge wire, whatever it is, and leave the insulation on it and run multiple traces. And now I've got to figure out how to route all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's weird because coming from a software development background, it's very easy to make a mistake and fix it, and you've wasted nothing except for electricity and time.
Yeah.
But in this case, if I make a mistake, I've wasted a perf board. I've got to start all over again. I've lost wire, I've lost connectors, I've lost things, and that's hard for me personally. And for someone who's done that forever, it's like, oh, I do it all the time. I don't know what you're whining about. Well, I'm whining about me and my life. It is hard for me to do that. I come from a world where you don't throw those things away, and it's different, and I got to overcome that. And so it's just it's fun.
Yeah.
I'm not crying about it, but at the same time, it is learning something new and getting out of my comfort zone and, growing me as a person kind of thing. And that's one of the cool things about any hobby, let alone ham radio, but it's one of the cool things about ham radio. That was a lightning question.
No. Two questions. Two questions left. Do you have a dream radio project you haven't built yet?
Yes, I would like to have a fully integrated with a computer radio project, which would then also include swappable modules. And one of the things that they did in model railroading was there was this club that would make, and club in the larger sense, not club in local club, but club in worldwide club. They would make these integrated, like my section is, 4 foot wide by 2 foot deep, and I have to have the main track across the front so that I can form a greater part of the community. But my
Yeah.
2 foot by 4 foot segment can be whatever my 2 foot by 4 foot segment is. And so I can make a switch to go off of the main line and have a roundhouse to unload cars and drop them off, or have a repair shop, or have a destination tourist trap town with a, you know, passenger station or whatnot, or I can do a nuclear power plant that has, supplies delivered and removed by train or something like that in my little section of diorama that connects to this larger section of railroad and becomes this operating event that we do. So I kind of want to do the same thing in radio, but there's some danger in that. And I got to figure out how to get past the danger. But like I want to make the best module that does, 20-meter bandpass filter,
Yeah.
and then connect that to you, who you have made. You know that the connection is, 22 millimeters down from the edge of the board, blah, blah, blah. And so my module snaps into your module kind of thing. And your module is the best, power amplifier to go from 5 watts to 100 watts. And so that then connects to my bandpass filter. And now my bandpass filter, I need to know the input output requirements, and I need to know where the voltage rails are and everything. And somebody else might make the best power supply, and somebody else might make the best whatever. And so, collectively we wind up making this really amazing technology. And then, because I'm the bandpass filter wonk, I'm not, but let's say I am, I make the absolute best bandpass filter, state of the art, cutting edge, new technology that no one's ever heard of before, or ever designed before, and now that becomes a thing. So, fully integrated, swappable parts radio, but also this whole evolution of modular, defined space interface parts that you can then prototype inside of that space, whatever you're excited about that day.
Oh yeah, it sounds very cool. I look forward to that for sure.
I look forward to learning how to do that because I don't know how to do it yet.
Well, I mean, as you found out when you were young and with the old computer, you certainly are
Yep.
capable of it.
We'll figure it out, or we won't. It's not that big of a deal either way. It's, dreams are dreams.
It's definitely a very good idea for sure. Last question: what is one piece of advice you'd give for a brand new operator?
Don't be afraid. That's it.
Yeah,
Don't be afraid. I mean, you
yeah,
can. I had a friend who got a radio that he inherited from somebody, dead relative or dead friend of the family or something like that, and he was paralyzed in fear to plug it in and turn it on. If you do it right, you've explored a new hobby, and if you do it wrong, you've explored a new hobby of repairing that thing that you just broke. And everything is fixable. This depends on how much effort and energy you want to put into fixing it. Like you wrap your car around a tree and walk away. You can learn how to not wrap your car around a tree anymore. You can also learn body work, or you can learn how to go get a job at a restaurant and bake the best bread ever to afford to have somebody else fix the car. Or you can
Yep.
learn that it wasn't worth fixing and just go buy another car. Like there's, again, that failure thing. There's all these different ways out
Yeah.
of these different things, and just don't be afraid. That
No,
everything is
I
on the
mean
outside
I mean
of your comfort zone.
that could apply to everywhere in life,
Yep.
not just ham radio for sure.
Yep.
All right. Conversations like this remind me why amateur radio still matters. Not because technology is old or nostalgic, but because the spirit behind it is timeless. Curiosity, experimentation, communication, community. And those things become even more meaningful for when we make room for other people to experience them. So in closing, Steve, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate it. Not only for the technical contribution that you made to amateur radio, but also the way you've helped make the hobby feel approachable and welcoming to so many people online. And you can find Steve on temporarilyoffline.com, and the YouTube channel, of course, is offline. The links will be in the video. And Steve, thanks again for spending time with us today, and for everything you do to help make amateur radio feel approachable, creative, and genuinely enjoyable for so many people. And to everyone listening, whether you've been licensed for 40 years or just earned your call sign in the last week, or are simply out there being curious about radio and trying to figure out where you would fit in, we want you to know there's room for you here. No matter what your age, identity, experience level, background, or path into STEM and radio, there's a place for you on the air. I am Todd Owen. My call sign's KE9DQS on behalf of Alliance Amateur Radio Network. Thanks for listening. We will catch you next time.